I think growing up in South Africa is such a beautiful thing because we get exposed to different subcultures. We get exposed to different individuals in terms of how they actually showcase themselves.
And you're live on Dead Radio.
Welcome to another very special episode of Dead Radio with your boy Ini. And once again, we have a very special guest in the building, reporting live from the Dead Store. We're going to let our guests introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into their life story. And you know how we do, get those jewels for you guys to use in your everyday lives. So without further ado, yes, sir.
Sanibona abantwana basekhaya igama lami Bafana Mthembu abaningi benu bangazi izinkabi. I am a content creator as well as a creative strategist by profession.
Yeah, and just an all-around fly guy. I love that. I love that. I love that. How are you feeling right now, in this second?
How I'm feeling right now in the second, I am grateful. I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for opportunities. More than anything, how I look at me being grateful is just me making it here. And I'm just excited to actually see how the interview goes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. How I always start every Dead Radio episode is that to predict the future, we have to go into the past.
Yeah.
And to find out who Bafana is today, we have to turn the book all the way to page 1. So tell us about Bafana as a young man. Ilimtwan. What type of young man were you? Were you playing Mostrating? Like, just walk us through Bafana as a young man.
Bafana as a young man, I think you're right by saying, Guti, I was playing Estradeni. I think being raised in Soweto.
Okay.
A lot of us growing up, we had friends in most cases. So as a young man, I used to play with my friends, but more than anything, I was more of an introvert. And having people who were in close proximity, it kind of made me to actually step outside from my comfort zone. And that's how I started being curious about stuff that I didn't know or stuff that I didn't understand. So as a young kid, I was an introvert who was just curious about life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When does style start creeping in your life? Like, in terms of you liking style, you liking battles, like, when does that come from your family, or did you find it mostrate?
I think growing up in South Africa is such a beautiful thing because we get exposed to different subcultures. We get exposed to different individuals in terms of how they actually showcase themselves in the public. So my interest in fashion, obviously it was influenced from Ikai. Then from them, I started being exposed to other people and how they style themselves. So I would say it's from my society and community that I was exposed in. Okay. That's where my influence came from. And the rest is just history on how the world became so small with access to social media or access to digital spaces. Yeah. Now you are able to actually tap into other subcultures or other communities that are not in your close proximity, right? So I think for me, it has always been people that I engage with. Yeah.
You were just sampling.
Yeah, I was just sampling from people that I engage with, and I think it's always around copy it until it's yours. Because I don't think for me there's something new. There's nothing new in the sun. There's nothing really new in the sun. So it's all about taking from someone, and if you're inspired by that person, how can you actually turn that inspiration to become original to you? So that's how I actually developed my style, because it changed with like season.
I'm a big fan of sampling. I believe in sampling above everything. Everywhere that you go, everything that you see, just sample it, turn it into your own thing.
Right. And funny enough that you mentioned sampling, I think yesterday I was having a conversation with someone very close to me, and we were talking around sampling and how it actually inspires new ways of doing things, you
Yeah.
know. And we were looking at it from a perspective of music to say there's some songs that I only found out it's an old song if it's sampled by a Drake or if it's
Yes,
sampled by a
yes,
Kanye West,
yes,
you know. And I think bringing Kanye West, I think he had sampled a lot of music. And going back to the old song, I'm like, oh, this song is actually quite nice, right?
It's amazing.
Right,
You're like,
yeah.
"What?
So
I didn't even know
know
that."
the song. So now you go back and listen to the old song, and which was actually introduced to you by this new song that Kanye West just dropped, or this song that Drake just sampled.
Yeah.
So I think sampling is quite important.
Everything, bro. It's everything. Okay. So now how does Bafana transition from a young man to like the teenage years, right? Very formative years for anyone in their life. Like what
Yeah.
happens? Are you still an introvert? Do you go deeper into style? Obviously you start seeing girls. Like
Yeah.
what starts happening in that period in your life?
So,
As a
like I
teen?
said earlier on, I'm still an introvert. It hasn't changed. I think how then Bafana transitions to be a teenager, you are now being exposed to different types of style. You're now being exposed to different information, and how you decode that for yourself. It's who Bafana was at the time. And I think in my teenage years, there was the subculture at the time, or what was popular at the time was amabhujwa. And all of us gravitated towards that to say, you know what, I'm going to go buy bhujwa because it's something that people like, or it's something that would make you look cool. So I think there's always a characteristic, or maybe always an important factor that would draw you to that specific subculture. So because I was born in Soweto and I was raised there, then the first interaction with style that belongs to a specific subculture was introduced through me as Amapocha. And I liked how they dressed, you know, and that's where in my teenage years I started understanding what type of style, or maybe what type of subculture I would want to belong to, because I think more than anything, style is style, but in most cases what happens is that we all want to belong into a specific society based on the principle or the values that actually govern that society. And when you look at Amapucha, it was around music, it was around the way they style themselves. And I believe with all those touch points that I've just mentioned, it's how most subcultures are actually quite developed. There's a touch of music, there's a touch of fashion, there's also a touch of how people communicate. And at the time, as a teenager, that society, or rather that subculture, spoke to me at the time as a teenager to say, this is where I belong right now.
This is my
tribe. Yeah, this is where I need to be. And it started there from being a butcher, and obviously because at the time documentation was not something that we used to do. We dressed to look cool, and we look cool for our friends and our community, and that was it, right? And that was pretty much it. And it developed from there up until I started meeting different people. And from meeting different people, it was then now I start being introduced to different styles that I was not actually being introduced to. Then I think jumping into my varsity years, what happened is...
what did you go study?
What did I go study? I studied become accounting at UJ.
Okay, dope.
So I studied become accounting at UJ. So going into my varsity years, what happened is at the time there was a shift in a popular subculture. There was an introduction in documentation when it comes to people archiving, or when it comes to people telling stories on how they wanted to tell those stories. And at the time, sartorial look was a thing. Like
it was
a lot of us,
huge
it was a huge,
thing.
and I think it was a huge thing in such a sense that it looked expensive from someone who didn't have information on how to source these clothes. Because it was when I was now introduced to like thrifting. And now being introduced to a different culture now, there's thrifting. And from there, I think it's when I was able to actually identify the style that I wanted to belong in. To say, okay, fine, now that I've seen how I've actually transitioned from being... Because as a kid growing up in the township, I think you transition you jump from one subculture to the next.
To the next.
You go from Uba Pansula, then you realize that angikwazi ukujayisa iskanda. let me jump to Isputra,
yeah.
you know, and jumping into other subcultures. I think when now it was around sartorial looking more like a gentleman, looking presentable, you know.
Dapper.
And not to say other cultures didn't look presentable, but I think it's around looking dapper, right? That's when I was like, actually, this is how I want to dress, right? And that's where the definition and identifying where I belong and the community that I want to speak about started for me to say I want to be a guy who's like presentable because I've seen the amount of respect they would get to say, okay, cool. If a guy walks in and is dressed in a suit, but it didn't quite make sense for me from just a clothing perspective. That's when me and my friends started the collective called Kumbula. And I think more than anything, the reason why we started it was we had a tagline that says 10 back time for something future forward, right? So that's what we and for us, I think when we started it, one of the most important things that I would want to highlight is that we didn't know what we were doing. Till today, I cannot tell you what we were doing, but I can actually speak boldly about the impact that we had as a collective at the time, because what we did in all the journey of us documenting and telling our stories was actually not making our situation define us. So we would actually go and shoot in disadvantaged backgrounds, dressed dapper, and for us it was just like not letting our situation define us. And when you look in history, and I stand to be corrected, in most cases, developing countries where people are not actually earning enough money, they don't want to look like they have problems.
Of course not.
Right. So I have so many problems happening in my life right now.
But
I just need to look representable.
I need to look fly. I can't look like my problem.
Exactly. And I think for us, the documentation of the Kumbula and in collaborating with people kind of made us realize that sometimes amazing ideas are not something that you actually plan. They just happen.
Yeah, they just
naturally,
happen in motion.
Yeah, and I think that was the beauty of the collective. It was that everyone had an important responsibility that they needed to play, and everyone was just crucial within the collective. Then yeah, we grew apart because as individuals we had different interests, and I think for me that's where my definition of style came from, to say I want to look representable, and in looking representable, there was this edge of seeing subcultures dying in my communities, right? To say, damn, when I was growing up, I used to see Ipantsula now and again. Right?
And you know exactly gore ke le pantsola,
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
is distinct from Sbuja. Like, and you're so right about the death of subcultures, right? It's something that I wanted to ask you. My theory is because the more connected we've become, the more subcultures have died, because now youth culture becomes one thing. We all like Nike,
We
or
all-
we all
yeah.
listen to Drake, we all like, it becomes one thing. And
Yeah.
now subcultures get wiped out. What's your perspective on that? Because when we were growing up, right, there were so many different subcultures, art forms, like there were so many different points of inspiration for kids.
Yeah.
And they could decide, okay, no, this is the tribe that I want to follow, this is the tribe. But now it's like the kids are all the same, they're all doing the same thing. So I'm worried about the death of subcultures.
And to answer your question around being worried about the death of subcultures, I think it's platforms like these that are quite important in archiving, in archiving subcultures, because while you were saying that, it for me, in having to start being vocal around it was the work that I do. I work in a creative space as a creative strategist. So the work that I do, I've always had a passion in actually telling stories. And in telling those stories, I think a story is a story. The device you decide to use to tell the story can be different, you know. And for me, I had issues in finding or sourcing rather people that I feel these people are stylish. And because I had a problem with sourcing that, I've also had to identify how people how people perceive individuals, you know. And the truth of the matter is that, like I mentioned earlier on, that subcultures would have its values, right? If maybe we look at the subculture of I'm a punk, right? You would see their values is around being mischievous. If you look at the subcultures of what do you call Yukotani, you would see that with them they are more playful and also mischievous, right? And I think what tends to happen is that in most cases it's easier to speak about the bad part of the subculture than to highlight what is amazing within the subculture, you know. And with that, for me, around the part of subcultures dying. Yes, we can see them dying in many cases, but I necessarily don't think it's them dying. I think it's people finding themselves to say, you know what, maybe I am not into being a star. I'm not, right? And because the world is so open enough for someone to be able to go online and look at guys like I think it's Desire. You look at guys like and be like, I don't know how to define that style. But I think that style is quite dope. And I think for me, that's the beauty of social media. And it's just that maybe how I always look at it is to say, maybe it's dying because I'm not actually playing in communities where people populate, though in those subcultures. If I go to a taxi rank or I go to a Tegwini Manje, I would see a lot of people who are mapping because it's their space, right? And I think for me, having to be vocal and not being able to see I'm not being referenced and I'm not being portrayed in such a sense that is palatable to me. Because for me, I can look at them and I'm like, oh, this is quite dope. But if I show someone else is going to be like, nah, this is not for me. Right. So I had to redefine it in such a sense that it's palatable to my audience. If I look at like 3 years ago, before I even started with the content, a lot of my friends didn't know what Brentwood was. Right now, there's quite a few people who own Brentwood pens. And I think that's the importance of representation, because representation goes beyond just about how you look. It's also about how you represent it. Because I think for them, their perception around maybe Brentwood was just associated with an older person, right?
The older guys,
exactly.
Cabbies, like taxi rank.
Exactly.
That's why someone like you is so important, because you're the person who samples that subculture and then makes people who are outside of that subculture understand. They'll be like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Yeah, and going back to the sampling, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's having to actually jump from one subculture to the next and being influenced and being inspired for you to be able to say, actually, this is what it means. This is the collective, or rather a society, a group I want to belong in. And there's a thin line between just dressing a Brentwood and being part of the subculture, right? And I think for me, it's not really around just dressing up. It's really about finding out. It's really about being involved within the subculture and understanding other elements that are quite important within the subculture, which is why it's important for me to be able to go and attend when was it? Last week, I went and attended Ingoma Kazwelonke. So with attending Ingoma Kazwelonke, and I'm glad that it was done during Youth Month, because the whole purpose of Ingoma Kazwelonke is actually to bring Ingoma, for Ingoma not to die, you know. So Ingoma is all about unity, all about bringing people together. And all about you know. And seeing those those things still being alive and still being appreciated, it also shows that it's bigger than just looking good.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you can identify, like, it's in most cases it's like when you were saying earlier on, to say the kids, they all look the same, they all dress the same, and it's like when we were growing up, or maybe when I was growing up, so they don't make it like a general thing, right? So I don't make it like general, but when we were growing up, if a guy is dressed like a hip hop artist, you would assume they know how to rap.
Rap, yeah,
You know,
you're right.
you will be so disappointed in not seeing them being able
To rap.
not being able how to rap, because you'll be like, okay, why are you dressed like that? Because
why?
it's the part of the subculture. And I think when you were asking earlier on around subcultures dying, I think there's this thing of just dabbing and just moving on, and without understanding what this thing really is. And I think it's important to actually understand the holistic of this
History.
culture.
Where does this thing come from? Why do people dress like this? Why do they speak like this?
Yeah.
The different slang that they use. That's a thing that I have a problem with the time that we're living in. People just want to take, but they don't understand, or they don't even want to take the time to understand.
Yeah.
You get me?
Yeah.
And that's why so many things are watered down.
Exactly.
It's like it becomes them pouring a little bit of Oros and gang water. It looks like it's Oros, but when you taste it, it's just water.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys are missing the point. Like, there's a history of whatever you want to get into. Go and learn about that thing. And once you learn about something, that's how you can add your own fingerprint to it. Damn, I hear that, bro. I hear that. I think let's get back on your timeline. So you're in varsity now. So has the collective split by this part?
So in varsity, the collective is actually doing well, because we now start collaborating with brand, but in a very small scale, because influencing was not a big thing back then. In a very small scale. I remember one of the campaigns that we started getting paid for was with Mr. Price. It was around the denim to denim story. So we entered, and we won. And what happened is that they created a whole billboard with the picture that we submitted. But going back to my point around, we didn't know what we were doing, and we also didn't have guidance, and which is the beauty around those years for me, because they had taught me to understand what you're getting yourself into. So the collective is doing quite well in varsity, and but we still don't know what we're doing. What we're doing is that we know that we're dressing nice, we're dressing well, we dress so nice that people start wanting to dress like us, because you're also like influenced by other people. And I think at the time the likes of the artists were the guys who were actually in the public eye, and everyone wanted to actually look like them, because they took really cool pictures, and we didn't want to replicate what they were doing, but we were inspired by what we were doing, and we felt like we want to actually support them in what they're doing and tell our story with a different perspective, or have a point of view in how we are telling our story. And our story was always based on turning back time for something fashion forward. And with that, it was just saying, let's go back to look at how our parents used to dress. How can we make it cool now? And that's where tailoring started coming in for us to say, okay, cool. Our parents used to dress this way. They would wear a suit, but it was not a slim fit suit. And with that, it now created a new habit of like thrifting. So we're doing great. In doing great, we garner so much attention that we start now getting people from Africa to actually want to be interested into what we're doing. Then we had one guy we brought into our collective. Then from bringing that guy into the collective, we switched the name from Kumbula to Love is Africa, because we brought in Lox, who's from Namibia. And Lox the Guru was also in the same aesthetic that we were actually representing, or rather the subculture that we were representing at the time. And we felt that it would be a crucial element to actually bring him in, because now we're actually bringing unity, right? And from there, it was around planning shoots, shooting every day. It was fun. It was cool. You look cool. You get more likes on Facebook.
Of course,
And I think
of course.
it's something that it's important to highlight, to say it's when people say just start, that's what they mean. I don't think in most cases they say just start, you will see your fruits, or you will see the progress now.
Just move.
Just move. And I think what we were doing at the time, it was like, you want to get 50 likes on Facebook because you felt like 50 likes meant so much to you. You need to dress up, go take a picture, get those 50 likes. What do? Do they make you? Do they actually make you want to go more, go again and try a different outfit? And with going again and trying different outfits, it was where the element of having to find your identity comes in. So we were good in varsity. Then just after varsity, that's when everyone started outgrowing the group. Because now, I think where we were at that time, it was we had played around enough to be able to identify where I belong.
Yeah, your fingerprint.
Yeah, to say, guys, listen, I get this thing, but this is where I belong. And someone else that would say, I don't actually support the direction that you're taking, and that's where the split would become, to say, okay, you know what, guys, I think this is it. And there's one thing I always want to, I always tell people that each and everything has its time. There's nothing wrong with something dying.
That's true.
If the lifespan of that was 5 years, that's it.
It's okay.
You can't force it. I can't come back now and say, hey guys, let's come together and recreate Kumbula, and I can't do that. But I think it was a beautiful phase of my life. It was the teachings I've gotten from the group. The guys were quite crucial in my style journey. Because I remember I mentioned that I walked in with the perspective of Ipantsula. And having to take a taxi and go to school, and you see a guy on a random Tuesday wearing a full suit.
Yeah.
As a student, you're like, okay, cool, this guy is very bold, and I want to be that guy. And it was that for me to say they've also introduced a new type of style that I was not necessarily introduced to, but a type of style that I felt it only belonged to all the people.
Yeah, the
corporate guys. They made it so palatable in such a sense that I can wear a suit on Monday and go to class, and which is what I did. So those were the varsity days, and those were the good old days. And shout out to Andile, David, Hannes, as well as Lux.
Shout out to the boys.
I think they played quite a very important role in instilling the style thing and making me be able to identify where I belong. Yeah,
I love that. I love how you view style, right? And one of the things that you said in the beginning was speaking about you being a storyteller, right? And as you're explaining your journey, I can see the different stories you were telling, even if it wasn't via your mouth, just through the aesthetic, right? A lot of people put on clothes just to put on clothes, but they don't realize that you're actually telling a story.
Yeah,
I love that. So the crew splits. What happens next for you? Do you get a 9 to 5? How do you start viewing the work? Because you guys had worked, like you had said, with Mr. Price, right? How do you start viewing your next part in your journey?
So the crew splits. How do I start viewing my next part in my journey? As much as I am an introvert, I've always wanted to share my point of view and my perspective on things that I enjoy. Could be things that I find funny. Could be things that I find informative. It could be anything. It depends on the purpose of why I'm doing that, right? So the crew splits. I need to stay relevant for myself because remember I did mention that sometimes it's not really about remuneration. It's really about the satisfaction that you get. So the satisfaction was to say, I continue dressing up, but now I'm dressing up without a point of view. Like what you were saying earlier on today, people just put on clothes. So I'm dressing up without a point of view, which is, it's developing days now. I'm dressing up without a point of view. Then one time, I'm like, I've always been so interested in a taxi driver style. So I want to say taxi driver style because that was my first encounter of it being taxi driver style. I've always been interested in that style because in my years of living, I saw how bold these guys were with their styling. I've never seen someone put on a formal trouser with sneakers.
Yeah, with sneakers.
And they do it so effortlessly and it looks cool. And I'm like, wow, this is quite nice, right? Then it's just that there are some tweaks that I would have to do, when I actually dress that way, right? So I get exposed to the taxi driver style, and that is where all the years of jumping from one style to the next comes together. And when it comes together, from a realization that it's more than just fashion. It's the language, it's the music, it's how they talk, it's the way they present themselves. It's the energy, right? So I'm like, this is where I belong. Why? It's a South African culture. And one thing I always appreciate about South Africans is that we are able to actually take something that belongs to someone and turn it into our own, turn it into what belongs to us. You look at the way that we speak English. We were like, okay, cool. You want us to speak this language? Great, we're gonna speak it, but we are gonna speak it how we speak it. It's stuff like I'll be there now.
Yeah, now.
It's only now. It's only understood in the South African context. If you say that to someone else, they'll be like, what do you mean now? And for us, it's that. So I think for me, it was being able to identify that it's important for me to belong to a specific group, and a specific group that borrows from a specific culture that holds so much pride and dignity. And I was like, you know what? I love the style. I need to start understanding what the style means. And just after switching from dressing like dapper, I switched to it's still dapper, but it's dapper in a South African context, So it's like you can't go anywhere in the world and see a Bing, but you can find a Brentwood and give it to someone else. But when you go anywhere and be like, this guy is Bing, and there's quite staple items that you are able to identify and say, this guy is Bing, And for me, it was understanding that it's a culture that I appreciated, from the storytelling of Umaskandi, how they write their songs. It's from the ingoma, Lions ingoma, and it's those elements that I feel like these are characteristics that actually would want for me to belong to a specific subculture. And just after Kumbula, it was me jumping to be Ibing, right? And here's where the change came in, because it's like dressing up in a suit, and you can't wear a suit every day, right? And I had to come into senses that, but why? And that's when the development of the content started, to say, okay, you know what? I'll pick a day. Then I know I'm fast forwarding, but obviously we'll go back, but I'll pick a day where I'll select to say, this is where I would like to drop content, and that's going to speak to the specific subculture. And if you look at how the content is structured, it's structured in such a sense that I don't use any sound. I use a Maskandi saw.
Yes.
So all of
and
yes,
you're so intentional.
intentional,
about
yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
to showcase that you might not like how I dress, but you might like the Maskandi song. And for me, I've done enough job in actually telling my story or having a point of view in highlighting the significance and why I actually love this subculture. You might not like the Maskandi song, but you might be interested in
The way,
and which are the things that I had a realization when creating content where I would have people that would say, I don't like how you dress, but the songs that you're using, please create a playlist for me. And for me, it was like, this is what subculture is. You know, it's not really just focused on one element. It's like maybe I don't like how you guys dress, but the certain things that you guys do, which I feel actually speak to me as an individual, and I would like to be or maybe rather introduced into those things, or maybe enjoy those things. And for me, that's how I've actually done it. So just after varsity, it was just finding my feet in those ways, just being intentional in stuff that I do. And going back to what you're saying, a lot of people right now, or maybe not a lot of people, but people just want to not take time to learn.
They
You know,
don't.
it's just like I want to get it right now. And I think I wouldn't be able to speak about my transition of style if it was not for the days of Kumbula, if it was not for those, because I think those days were able to teach me how to be able to identify where I belong.
I get you. Damn, like you're such one thing that I'm picking up from you is something that a lot of people don't have is respect, right? Respect for different subcultures, because that respect is the reason why you dive deep into something, learn about
it, yeah.
and then you know exactly how to sample it in your way. Like it sounds like you have a lot of respect and like you learn a lot about things before you just jump into something.
Yeah, and that's that. And what you would find in most cases, and not to say there's something wrong. I think in all of us are learning, and all of us are. I want to be taught. Even now, I'm learning, right? I think what I've identified is that redefining doesn't make it modern.
Yes.
You know, so sometimes people would say, like people would say, I'm a modern being. But no, a being is a being. For me, you know, there's no modern. It's just redefining to say, yes, if these are the characteristics that actually define what it means to be a being, yes, I will have those things. But it has to speak to who I am as an individual. Because as much as we want to belong, we still want to belong as individuals. Within that society that we're actually occupying, or that community. So I think for me, it's redefining, and just from redefining, you just like, I borrowed from the subculture and I still want to belong within the subculture, but I've realized that maybe I don't like wearing these trousers with sneakers. Let me redefine it and just wear them with formal shoes and see how they look. And you know, with that, you can't do that if you didn't actually borrow from a specific subculture, because it was you being able to identify that within that subculture, this is what they do. So let me see if I can actually bring it here. Because when we look at all South African subcultures, they embody this similar characteristics. For me, Kotana, Mapantsula, Amatamara,
there's a golden
thread that is actually quite there. And I think that's why it's important to have platforms like these, because I'm imagining because this is what I went through as a creative also, to say, I want to sell an idea that involves it being, but I don't have a point of reference.
The point of reference.
I don't have it. So when I come to you and I say it being, someone is like, what is that? You know, I don't get it. You know, and in most cases, people will say taxi driver, and we understand the stereotypes that people have around taxi drivers.
But that's just the surface.
That's just the surface, you know. And I think for me, that's the importance of representation, because it allows people to actually be themselves. And by being themselves, there's so many things. And when I started with the content, the reason why I started also beyond just actually having to have a point of reference, it was everything was looking the same, like what you were saying earlier on. Like everything when I went online, it was looking the same. Like it was, yes, aspirational. Yes, I want to look like that guy. But we need to be realistic about the society that we stay in. South Africa, the unemployment rate is very low, right? And by being aware around my society, not a lot of people are like that. And besides, like beyond just being like that, they don't speak like that. So I think for me, it was important also to speak in vernac because it was something that I was not seeing in in many spaces, right? Then from doing it, that's when I started now seeing many people actually doing their content in their language and embracing it. And I think representation is important in that way because someone might feel like this platform is not suitable for this language.
Yeah,
so
right.
I need to sound this way. And I think with representation, it just makes people to feel like, okay,
I can
now
be
I can be myself,
I can be
right?
myself.
And that's one thing that I realized to say it was able to inspire other people, and not in just fashion, maybe inspire other people in other avenues like in cooking, in food spaces, to be able to actually articulate themselves in their own language because I don't think if I spoke English, people would understand what I was
they wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Yeah.
Ibile, your influence would be less.
Yes.
Your influence would be, once again, it's the oros. You'd be pouring all the water in the oros and it would be watered down. Damn, I love how you've reverse engineered so many things. And now anyone who's watching this is going to be like, oh, so for me to find my style in the world, I need to go and be a student first.
Yeah.
I need to go and learn about things, and then I can add my fingerprint on top. I love that. I love that. When do brands start coming to knock on your door in terms of like the content stuff?
So I think there's a pattern that is that we see when brands start knocking at people's doors. You know, it's from an engagement perspective. It's you post a picture, you get more likes. You speak to the archetype that they want to speak to.
Of course,
right?
of course.
So brands. The funny thing is that brands start coming in 6 months later after the content.
After you've been consistently
putting in. And one thing that I've realized during that time is that when you put something to the internet, it does not belong to you anymore. It belongs to the public. And it's up to them to actually tell you what you need to do next. And for me, as much as I was saying earlier on to say, I was able to identify my subculture as being based on past experiences and being exposed to when brands starting come, obviously it's like 6 months after into the content, but it was just when I wanted to just be like, I want to stop. But I've also realized that this is not for you because you went live with one video. People are like, hey Joe, next week Sunday, we're waiting for you.
Yeah.
So now my schedule shifts now to say every Sunday because how I work, and many people might work differently. How I work, I shoot on a Sunday, edit on a Sunday, post on a Sunday.
Okay.
So with all the videos that have went out, they were shot on a Sunday, edited on a Sunday, then posted on a Sunday. Because I felt that in many times when I used to shoot before edit, I would pick up so many mistakes and I would hold back and be like, no.
Then you get in your head, and then you're like,
I don't want to do it anymore. So with how I approach my style of shooting was just based on that formula or that process I was doing. So 6 months after into doing the content, the brands start coming in, right? The brands start coming in, and they're coming in different. From different angles, you know. I think how they are coming in, they're coming from a music perspective, which is Spotify. Spotify comes and we work on how we can actually get more people to actually subscribe to Spotify. And I think for me, the challenge and that I faced and the opportunity was, now how do you now take the platform that you have created and follow what the brand is asking, because there's a brief, there's things that you can't do. There's so many restrictions that it makes the content to not now look as authentic as you want it to be. And there's this thin line that sometimes you find around authenticity, where in most cases people would think authenticity is taking a video with your phone. It's just taking, that's not for me, that's not
that doesn't make
authenticity is who you are, right? So regardless of you shooting with high quality, lower quality,
it has to be you.
Like I mentioned earlier on, the device cannot define authenticity, but the story is what defines what authenticity is. So with that, there comes new challenges. You can't do this, you can't do that. And I think for me, starting having to work with brands, it has actually opened up my mind quite. It has actually made me aware on how when you do stuff, you would always have to alter it to actually fit who the audience is, right? And with that opportunity, it brought me into a space of having to think differently, having to let go of certain things, and having to understand my point of view, right? Because I think one thing that I would like to leave people with is just have fun. It sounds like it's vague and it's not powerful, but for me it's really around just having to be able to have fun in what you do. Because what I've realized is that all the videos that went out before brands came through, it's stuff that I looked at and I was like, oh, this is so funny. This is so cool. Then I posted it. And how I got the feedback from people is when now it's the learnings, it's the teachings, right? It's people coming forward to me to say, hey, you can't do that because the culture doesn't allow for that. Then for me, it's that being open to learning to people, learning what people are saying and learning new ways of doing things, and just not being around it's my way or the highway. So brands start coming, Spotify comes, then G-Star comes, there's a lot of brands coming in. Something that when I started, I did not anticipate would happen. But however, I also need to be honest in how, when I was saying the pattern is always the same. You post, you get more likes, you get more engagement, brands will come. It's just up to you on how long you can wait for the brands to come. But also it's important to understand your point of view, because it's not really just about getting ready. Why are you getting ready? What are you talking about? What perspective and what's the story really about? As much as we can have guys like Abu Sabelo who clean and that's his point of view, right? And wherever you go, not wherever you go, but when you start speaking about content creation and you highlight people who clean, he's gonna be the person that comes to mind to say, actually, that guy. Because I think what sometimes people tend not to understand or tend to lose within the content creation space is, what is the point of view what is your point of view? And I think for me, I was quite fortunate enough to be able to identify my point of view on set and stick with like I was able to stick with that throughout. So even when brands came, I wasn't diverting to,
and they don't water you down. Like when I go through just even your Instagram, you remain you. Like that fingerprint is always there. Whether you're working with Puma, Spotify, G-Star, it doesn't matter. Like, because a lot of people, like, that's just to go back to what you said, they lose the focus. Like, and then now us as fans were like, actually, who are you? Like, because now if it means that any brand can just make you, but for you, you've managed to like, this is who I am. This is who Bafana is. This is my story. And whether I'm working with Puma or whoever, this is my story. I love that, bro. Like,
thank you so much.
It's amazing. This has been such a great conversation. What's your perspective on style in South Africa in 2025? As someone who's not moved by trends, who sticks in their story, what's your perspective like on what's happening in South Africa in terms of style in 2025?
What is happening in South Africa in 2025 in terms of style? For me, if
Like, are you
there's
happy? Are you like, you're not sure about it? Is it getting
I
watered down?
you know
It's
that's
tough.
it's a very tough one to answer, but where I am, I think I'm happy, and the reason why I'm saying I'm happy, it's because it's um it's a new space for a lot of people, and we need to be kind enough to actually uh, grow with the people that we support. There's so many South African brands that are actually doing amazing stuff. The likes of Did, the likes of Refuse, the likes of Broke,
Galaxy Boy.
Galaxy
Oh,
Boy.
there's
There's
so
so
many,
many,
yeah.
right? And I think for me, it's the point of view that they have, and with the point of view that they have, it's it's not fair for me to speak for a subculture or a culture that I don't actually tap in, and I'm taking it from the surface. I've seen amazing designers come out of South Africa, the likes of Tebe Makuku, the likes of Lucanio, there's so many guys who are doing amazing work, and I think where it's the reason why I'm saying it's freedom. It's giving people a canvas to actually tell you a story of who they are, and let the world come in and consume that. So for me, I'm I'm just happy to see people doing it, because we thought it was something that's not possible. And I'm just happy for seeing brands doing more than just clothes. I'm seeing brands understanding their consumers and tapping into spaces that their consumers occupy, which is something that's beautiful to watch, for me to say, wow, there's progress, there's developments. They understand their brand, they understand what the market is saying, they are moving with the market, and for me, that's what liberation is. It just gives people the power to be able to actually speak what they want to say. Yesterday when we're having a conversation with someone very close to my heart, what we were talking about was around Dade as a brand, because I think it's important for everyone to actually do a bit of a background. And I'll be honest, right? I just knew Dade, and she highlighted what is it? We're gonna live forever.
Yeah,
The slogan.
yeah.
And she was like, "That's so crazy, because you die, then you're gonna live forever." And for me, it's understanding how someone came with that, and understanding that coming with that requires you to be in a specific, or maybe requires you to be in the mindset that makes you to be liberal. Like you're liberated in such a way to say, if I die, I'm able to live forever. And
Yeah.
it's not just me, we are all going to live
Live
forever.
forever.
And for me, realizing that it's something that someone else might not be picking up to say dead, because someone else might take dead as it's
As in literally
as
dead.
yeah, and be like, which was something that I've experienced when I started wearing the bro cap with some of my friends. They were like, what is this cap?
What do you mean broke?
And for me, it was the moves that the guys were making. I'm like, these guys are actually making these things happen. It's for me, it's I don't want to say it's like, for me, it was just having to go back and relive moments like boys and
Boys in
Bucks.
Bucks,
It was like how freedom was. Do what you want to do it in the way that you want to do it. Don't let anyone tell you how to do it. And for me, it was really just that. And so I think it's in a good space, because it goes far beyond in just the brands doing themselves. You guys did a collaboration with Dakota,
Of course.
and I think for me, it's just realizing that collaboration is not something that is linear.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you can
yeah,
go from
yeah, yeah.
from here to there.
Yeah.
Which the reason why I'm also saying that there's a friend of mine who's a co-founder of Bandits Bicycle, Tebogo Galagala. When I started like enjoying cycling with him now and then and attending some of the cycling uh, 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 I don't know what they call it,
Events or
events,
get
yes,
together,
cycling
yeah.
events on the weekends. I felt that representation is always important, which is why I decided to collaborate with him and do a bicycle that is being inspired. It might not get the traction that I wanted it to get now, but someone who's seeing me riding that bike would actually see that, oh snap, I can actually make a bike, which is a subculture that I've also was inspired by those kids who actually designed those bicycles, which is something that we saw overseas back in the days, but we didn't think it would be something that's going to be living in South Africa. And how it's done in South Africa, it's different from how it's done overseas. I've never seen someone spin a bicycle.
Yeah.
It's only being in South Africa. And I was fascinated by that culture that these boys are doing. And I think it's important for brands to be able to identify those subcultures and actually support them, because it's the likes of Red Bull who are able to actually take a spinner and take them overseas to be able to spin ikusheshe, and which is something when we look at it from a perspective, sometimes you're like, against that is it. You know, we're already quick to say, but there has to be someone who's able to identify and say that's a sport, which is the same thing, Nyangoma, what you say, that's a sport. And if we don't actually go ahead and support this thing, we are not going to be able to actually see Amakitangoma being able to be invited to collaborate with the brand, because no one is actually showing that representation. And the people who are only consuming it are people who live in those spaces. If we are living in one space and we consume the same thing, we are not exposing it to someone, to anyone else, you know. And I think that's for me around collaboration and the space that South African brands are in. It's just freedom and being able to like collaborate, but everyone is just doing an amazing job.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, bro. As we wind down this conversation, there's gonna be a kid who's gonna watch this and be like, I'm studying accounting right now, but I'm really identifying with Bafana's story.
Yeah.
What's your last piece of advice to that person? To the dreamers out there, the people who are in different subcultures and want to step out into the world and make a name for themselves?
The message that I would give to that individual is that you have to know why you started. I think with knowing why you started, you are going to understand the challenges that comes with what message or what you want to leave the world with, you know. And yes, you might be in a different industry, but you can relate to certain subcultures. You just gotta do the investment and put in the work. Like, I think there's so many platforms that, or rather resources that are available to actually get one to be able to understand if I belong within this thing or I don't belong. So for me, it's just understanding that I don't want to say you have to work hard. Obviously, everyone has to work. You know, there's no way I can justify what working hard looks like. You know, the recent, like I was listening to Ricky's song, which is currently my favorite right now, The Higher Power, the opening song.
The opening song of the new album.
New album. There's a part where, obviously I wouldn't say it the way it is, there's a part where he mentions that he doesn't know how these things came about, and he sees that young people are actually working. It's just that maybe at that moment the stars didn't align, it didn't favor you. So I just want you to know that you really did put in the work. So it's important to know your perspective, because when you know your perspective and your point of view, you are going to be able to actually roll with the punches when everything happens, when everything rolls out. So I think it's not just about wishing, it's really understanding that there has to be work that you need to put in. And how the fruits come about, I cannot tell you. Like I'm literally, I cannot tell you. I went from graduating from accounting to be given an opportunity to work in agency, and when given that opportunity, I had to work. to be able to make a name for myself within that space. And I think that's how life is. You know, as much as people say things will not be handed over to you, yes, they will not be handed over to you, but you might find yourself given an opportunity.
Yeah.
And what you do with it, it's up to you, because I believe that it's better for an opportunity to find you working than for you to say, the only time I would start maybe a label brand is when someone invests 2 million. But how?
That's not how life works.
You know, so I think for me, it's like rather let things find you while you're working. There's different formulas that people can put out, and you just have to utilize and get all the resources that are available to you, and just funnel everything to what the point of view you want to create is. Because going back to highlighting Sabelo as a guy who cleans, he's associated with hygiene. So you can imagine how he was able to say, because I'm associated with hygiene, what I'm going to do is make sure that I show younger people, or whoever the audience is, how to take care of their space. And someone else might look at it and be like, he's just cleaning. But he's just showing people on how to actually take care of your space.
He's storytelling as well.
Right? In a different point of view. And I think that's, for me, it's one thing I always want to reiterate, to say, you need to have a point of view, because when you have a point of view, you will be able to find your community. And when you find your community, throughout those challenging days, they will be able to tell you that, hey, what you're doing is bigger than what you think
what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
Praka, thank you so much.
Done.
This has been amazing. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode of Dead Radio.